So what if Carter Starocci couldn't go? What if he didn't wrestle this postseason? Would that mean that Penn State's no longer the favorite going into Big Tens and NCAAs?
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily Penn State Nittany Lions podcast. I'm your host, Zach Seyko, and we are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, the Nissan Armada, and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Help me welcome back special guest, the voice of Penn State Wrestling, daily talk show host with Fox Sports 98.7 up in State College, Happy Valley's local sports talk station, and that is Jeff Byers. And if you're not already, become an everydayer, subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. Wrestling. Carter Starocci, we know that he suffered an injury in the final dual meet against Edinburgh, Jeff. And now the question becomes, I'm optimistic. I said I was optimistic about Carter, but what if he can't go? And knock on wood, I really hope he can, obviously, but we have to understand what Penn State's contingency plan would be and where they would be in terms of, are they the favorite anymore? Does it become Iowa, Oklahoma State? So with regards to the Big Ten championships and NCAAs, where do you think Penn State is going into those if Carter cannot wrestle?
Yeah, it's kind of an odd situation, Zach, where potentially, and again, my guess is Carter is going to wrestle, and I don't have any inside information. I've kind of kept myself purposely ignorant this week so that because I don't want to be responsible for letting anybody know something that they don't want out there. But my guess is, unless the MRI showed like significant structural damage in the knee, just can't withstand anything. Barring that, I would expect Starocci's going to tape it up, brace it up, do whatever he needs to do to go. If in fact he were out, playing the hypothetical of, there is no Carter Starocci, it really is amazing, Zach, because you would then have two national title contenders out of the lineup for Penn State. Shane Van Ness, who was injured early in the season, and Carter Starocci, ranked number 2 and number 1 at the time that they went out. And with those two out, Penn State would be the overwhelming favorite to win both Big Tens and the NCAAs. Like, there's not anybody conceivably close. Iowa in both cases is probably the team that has the best chance to make some sort of a run. But again, if you take Starocci out of the lineup, and presuming Terrell Barraclough would be in his place, and that's what I'm presuming, what you would end up with then is still 4 number 1 ranked guys going into the Big Ten tournament. 4 guys that are, everybody would agree are at least the favorites to win national titles. There is no other team that has more than 1. So the top end firepower is still there for Penn State. You go from 5 to 4, and that's a loss for sure. But you have 4 number 1. Mitchell Messenbrink is still sitting there undefeated. I know he's ranked 5th. I don't know exactly where he fits in the upper pantheon, but I think he's right there with the Keegan O'Toole's and the David Carrs of the world. Whether or not he, wins it all, finishes 3rd, finishes 4th, I don't know, but he's right there. He's in that mix. So that gives you a 5th national title contender in my mind. And I would not rule out guys like Tyler Kasak, Aaron Nagao, Bernie Truax getting hot here when the tournament rolls around. I think all of those guys have that type of potential.
Yeah.
When you look at like in Iowa, it is a really good team. Iowa has a really good team. They don't have the top end firepower, nor do they have that. They are not going to finish with 8 or 9 All-Americans. They just aren't. Penn State, even with Starocci were out of the lineup, I kind of think worst case scenario, Penn State still ends up with 6 All-Americans and 9 scoring wrestlers, meaning 9 wrestlers who win at least a bout at the national tournament. That is an awful lot for any other team to overcome, especially if Penn State does get, let's say even 3 in the finals and 5 guys placing in the top 3. If you get 1 or 2 other All-Americans, that pretty much clinches the national title for Penn State.
And that just tells you how good Penn State is, right? That a number 1 ranked wrestler, and I think the debate is, who's actually the best overall wrestler? Is it Carter Starocci or Aaron Brooks? I mean, I know that Carter Starocci is chasing a different type of history if he even does come back for a 5th season, and he still needs to wrestle and win his 4th, of course. But the Nittany Lions are so loaded, and when you have Barraclaw who could step in and at least give you serviceable wrestling, he's not going to contend and be a bona fide All-American, but he can at least win you some matches at Big Tens, win you some matches at the NCAAs if all things go well, and just not have an absence in the lineup. And I think that was the biggest concern there. Jeff, let's discuss on the other side. We'll take a quick break, and when we discuss on the other side what happens in regards to history for Penn State, because they are chasing national championship history, setting the points record, the 10 out of 10 All-Americans, and getting at least 5 national champions, maybe a 6th. Now, that's going to be really tough, but we're going to discuss how that would all work if Starocci's not out a little further on the other side of this break. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Take the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive. Google built-in is your always updating assistance to call for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. What about the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder? It has room for up to 8 people, an expensive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop at nissanusa.com. That's nissanusa.com. The Locked On Podcast Network is making history. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app. And again, if you want to keep up with Jeff and everything that he does, he'll be calling Big Tens, the NCAAs on GoPSUSports.com. You can also listen to him on 98.7 the Fox, 98.7 FM Fox Sports up in State College. And you can stream at 987thefox.com. So again, I don't want to speak it into existence too much. The hope is, the expectation is that Carter Starocci will wrestle. It might not be at 100%, but he will wrestle, and that's still the best available for Penn State. We know that. That's not up for debate here. What is up for debate is what this lineup would look like in terms of production and if they would take a step back. And we've kind of already answered that, Jeff, is the fact that Penn State won't take that much of a step back, that they'll still have 4 national title contenders guaranteed. And then a lot of, like you said, 9, like the potential for 9 scoring wrestlers that will get you points. But I think what comes into question now is it's going to be really difficult to chase that history because it's such unfortunate timing with the injury. But Carter Starocci is that important because in terms of bonus point, it's not just about victories here. It's about scoring bonus points because we know Starocci would get tech falls, would get pins along the way and add to that total for Penn State. And when this team was thought to be, at least in the conversation, for the best college wrestling team in all of history, I don't want to say that one gets thrown out the window, but it's definitely becomes a lot more difficult if We don't know for sure right now, but that's why we're talking about this. If Carter Starocci cannot wrestle at Big Tens and NCAAs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess I wouldn't rule out the possibility still of setting the record, but it becomes a really tall order. I mean, I think it's very unlikely with Starocci out of there. I mean, it was, certainly not a given with Starocci in there. I mean, you're still having to get a lot of things go your way and break right and get guys really performing at or above their seeding to be able to accomplish that feat of topping 170, which the 97 Hawkeyes set the standard at. So again, I wouldn't rule it out, but man, you're going to have a couple of guys really come through in a big way. Now, is that possible with this lineup? Sure. Again, a Mitchell Messenbrink, could he break out and win the national title? Yeah, I certainly think he's capable of doing that. Could a Braden Davis or a Tyler Casack get hot at the tournament, or an Aaron Nagao or Bernie Truax? Yeah, I mean, I think those guys are all capable of beating anybody in the country. But again, you're going to need 10 scoring wrestlers. You've got to get that 97 Iowa team, again, had 6 in the finals, 5 champions, 8 All-Americans, and all 10 wrestlers won at least 3 bouts. Now, if you take the hypothetical with Starocci out of there, again, you'd still have 4 number ones for Penn State, and you could see a 5th getting in there, whether it was a Messenbrink or a Truax getting hot, Tyler Casack getting hot, something like that. But it starts to become, again, it's a trickle-down thing. Then can you get all 10 guys to win, at least 3 bouts? Possible. I mean, I think all 10 of the guys that they would send, that's still possible. Could you get 8 All-Americans? Yeah, I think that's possible with this lineup. But yeah, can you get the bonus points and all of that? Again, possible, but I don't think likely. I think with Starocci in there, again, I think it's a real chase. I think it's a legitimate pursuit. I think even with him in there, again, that is a tall order, 170 points at the NCAA tournament. There's a reason that's the record. It's been done one time. But with Starocci in there, yes, I think this team can give a real run at it anyway. I think with him out of there, again, possible, probably, but I think very unlikely.
What about an idea? So, and correct me if I'm wrong here for even asking this question. Could Penn State hold out Carter Starocci from the Big Ten tournament and allow him that extra time to recover to go into NCAAs, or is it absolutely needed that he must wrestle into Big Ten? So this kind of shows a little still lacking a little nuance when it comes to college wrestling here, but you're the expert, Jeff, and that's why we bring you on the show. So could Carter Starocci miss Big Tens and have that extra time to prepare for NCAAs, or does he need to wrestle in the conference tournament in order to go to the national tournament?
So the way it works, you have to qualify through your conference tournament. So you have to wrestle in the Big Ten tournament. Now, the caveat to that is, and we've seen this happen before, but so he has to weigh in. Carter Starocci has to weigh in, and he has to step on the mat. They have to blow the whistle. Now, what they could do if the knee is bad enough and they think another couple of weeks he could be good enough to go, and at least give it a try at Kansas City. What he can do, again, he has to weigh in. Has to make weight to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. And then he has to wrestle 1 second of 1 bout. Now, with his resume, he could do that. You could shake hands, tell the official, I'm injured, I can't continue.
Injury default,
After 1 second, injury default, and then medically forfeit out. And with his resume this season, he would get an at-large bid. So that is all he has to do. He does have to go to the Big Ten tournament, does have to weigh in, and has to compete for at least 1 second of 1 match. But that is all he has to do in order to make himself eligible for consideration. Now, Jason Nolf, I think it was in I keep getting my years mixed up here. This would have been 2018. Jason Nolf, if you remember, had the ACL injury that he suffered it back in January. So they had some time to kind of work and prepare with him. Now, what he did was wrestle an entire bout. He got a win at the Big Ten tournament and then medically forfeited out to 6th place. That is certainly a possibility here for Starocci as well. where if you think you can get a win. Now, the difference now is, though, that you do get dinged. So he would have 2 losses is the bottom line for Starocci on his record. Because he'd have the injury default, that's a loss. And then your first medical forfeit this year in any college tournament, if you medically forfeit about that first one, counts as a loss. After that, they don't count as losses, but that first one does. So he would have 2 losses. So it would ding him in terms of his seeding. He would not be the number 1 seed at the NCAA tournament. Now, he'd probably still be a pretty high seed. My guess would be anywhere from 3 to 5, depending on what happens in the conference tournaments. But I don't think he'd be any lower than 5. And I think more likely 3 or 4 here is where he would be seated. But if he's able to go, again, Jason Nolf, those guys are so elite, even wrestling on one leg. Now, again, Mekhi Lewis, a one-legged Carter Starocci against a Mekhi Lewis, that's not a given that Starocci wins it. There aren't many other bouts there, to be honest with you, Zach, that if Carter is able to just, again, get some stabilization in that leg, I think they can make the adjustments. And he's just such a competitive warrior that I think he finds a way to win. And I'm not saying he can't beat Lewis, by the way. I'm just saying that one to me it's dicey. But I feel like Carter would, be where I would put my money in any other bout.
Just quickly here, because we have another break coming up, but what's the likelihood that Penn State would do that, considering having Starocci, injury default, you lose the winning streak, and then just focus on NCAAs? Because the Cael Sanderson has said this in his media availability, that the 4th national title is the most important thing, and they're not even considering the winning streak, all things above.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think if there is any risk of that knee getting further tweaked and injured at the Big Ten tournament, again, you want to be as healthy as you possibly can be in the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, the seeding, the winning streak, all of that stuff is secondary to getting Carter Starocci as healthy and ready to go as you can for the NCAA tournament.
Chestnut checkers in this case to get Starocci best available for NCAAs. We got one more break. On the other side, we already mentioned it, Terrell Barraclaw would be available and could wrestle at 174. What his potential would be in Starocci's place. And just, Jeff, I want to ask you what the injury is, the difference here, because Carter did wrestle injured once upon a time and won a national title. So how different is this injury this time around? That's coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. Get buckets with your first bet now on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your first bet simply wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players, all your favorite NBA teams with things like quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. If you like a bunch of different bets, you can combine them all together into one bet known as a parlay with boosted odds, and more importantly, boosted winnings. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Remember, if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations and discussions around your favorite Penn State sports teams. Talk more than just football on this show. Obviously, talk wrestling, men's basketball, men's hockey, recruiting. All of that is here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And remember, you can keep up with Jeff. You can listen to his daily morning talk show, 8 to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday on Fox Sports 98.7. You can also stream it at 987thefox.com. And in this final segment, Jeff, just the last thing about Carter Starocci with all these hypotheticals, and again, the hope is, the expectation is that he will wrestle, but I think it's important to understand what could happen in a negative case scenario. Carter Starocci wrestled with a hand injury, and I know this is much different because all your leverage, all your power comes from your legs in wrestling and just about any sport, really. It all comes from your legs and your hips. So with a knee, this is obviously a lot more significant than I would imagine than a hand injury, but you would know better to know the severity of what Carter was dealing with that one time, again, on his national championship run. And then this time around with what in regards to wrestling and technique and everything, and Carter Starocci's game. So is there that much of a difference here from when Carter was hurt previously to where he is now and how much it affects his game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, winning with the broken hand was
it was broken.
Yeah, not insignificant. But yeah, the knee is definitely kind of next level difficulty, but it's also one that we've seen lots of wrestlers overcome. I mean, you go all the way back to the 80s with Scott Lynch and Penn State. He did that. Jason Nolf more recently, Spencer Lee for Iowa. So it is not unprecedented that a guy with a serious knee injury, torn ACL in those cases, can go out and still win a national title. It is certainly more difficult. I mean, you have got to make some significant adjustments here, but guys that are elite, which Carter Starocci certainly is, you can make those adjustments. You know how to protect that leg a little bit. You know how to take advantage of the situations that you need to get in there. So, I still, if he can go, even with the bum knee, I'd say it's a kind of a 50-50 proposition, at least in my mind, for him still winning the national title.
And then if he is completely out of the lineup here, and still in regards to Big Tens, right? We know that he could default and focus on NCAAs, but in steps Terrell Barraclaw, and Barraclaw is wrestling up. Normally he's a 165 wrestler, and then Mitchell Messenbrink starts. But Barraclaw, we saw him win a ranked match against Rutgers in the Bryce Jordan Center, stepping in for Starocci when he was out of the lineup. Again, don't know what the circumstances were there, but the fact is that Barraclaw is a veteran. He's in this Penn State wrestling room. So anybody that's in this wrestling mat room for Penn State is still very talented regardless. What can he do if he were to ask to go through Big Tens? And again, I don't like to say it. I don't like to speak it into existence, but NCAAs, where does he match up against the rest of the competition?
Yeah, honestly, Zach, I think Terrell would fare well for himself. I really do. I think, as you said, he's very experienced. I think he's very confident, and I think he would be looking at it like he's kind of playing with house money, right? Yeah. It would be an opportunity that he certainly wasn't expecting this year. And I think, I just think with his mindset, again, I don't think he's going to go out and win in the national title, but I could see him getting on the podium, Zach. I really could. Wow. I think he's a guy with his top ability. Now, some of it's going to come down to matchups. Like, what does his bracket look like? If he gets to nationals, and obviously first he would have to qualify through Big Tens. I think he would do that, and I think he'd get to the national tournament. I think he'd certainly win at least a couple of bouts at the NCAAs. Again, it's going to come down to matchups. Kind of, does his style match up well with a guy, or does he get just a powerhouse who's strong as can be for 174 pounder? That might be a tough matchup for him, but. Certainly not all hope is lost if it is Terrell Barraclaw that's out there. Again, I don't think the expectation is a national title any longer, but I think, there's a real possibility there for All-America honors still.
So Penn State could hypothetically reach that feat of 10 out of 10 All-Americans. Time will tell. Hopefully Carter Starocci is okay, but he is a workhorse, so we know that he is training his rear end off, rehabbing well to get back out there so that he doesn't have to miss anything. That's the voice of Penn State wrestling, and also your daily talk show host on Fox Sports 98.7, Jeff Byers, joining the show once again. Remember to keep up with Locked On Nittany Lions wherever you get your podcasts, and including YouTube. Let us know in the comments what you think about Carter Starocci's injury and the way that Penn State's lineup sets up going into the postseason. And for more conversations around Locked On Nittany Lions, subscribe here for your coverage of your favorite teams. Jeff, thanks so much for the time once again, and can't wait to preview the Big Ten tournament as well as the NCAA tournament in due time.
Can hardly wait.